1994 was a special year in Eurovision history. It was the first time that the same country hosted the contest in 2 consecutive years. RTE opted for the capital Dublin to host the event this year. Surely now it was somebody else's turn to win, right? Nope. With the probably most gentle song in the history of the contest, Paul Harrington and Charlie McGettigan did the impossible and gave Ireland their famous triple victory, with a song written by Brendan Graham. And RTE would go on to simply decide to remain in Dublin and the Point Theatre for another year. I checked in with the 2 rock and roll kids to see what they are up to nowadays. We had an incredible, joyful and slightly chaotic morning, and a pleasant conversation went on for so long that Charlie almost missed a meeting and I had to run to my day job. Maybe I didn't get to ask all the questions I had planned, but it doesn't matter, because I'm certain that you too will enjoy this talk with these 2 gentlemen. This is Eurovision Legends, and I am Emil Löfström. Welcome to Eurovision Legends, Charlie McGettigan and Paul Harrington.
Good morning.
Hello, from Leitrim in Ireland. Where are you from, Paul?
Well, I'm from Dublin. Still, all these years, can you imagine? They still held onto my passport.
and rightly so.
Correct.
Are you good?
We are great.
Absolutely. I can't complain. I mean, who could complain in living in Dublin or certainly in Ireland anyway, with weather like one of the worst winters we've ever had, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. So, hey, yeah, we're pretty marvellous.
How did you manage, Paul? I hate to say this very loudly, but I actually enjoyed an awful lot of the pandemic. I loved the break, the freedom from stress, not having to put up with Paul Harrington every day and running after him.
You know what they say? It's all that social distancing, malarkey. Look, listen. I think it's different for everybody, and I tell you what gives me heart is when I hear, Charlie, that you got to enjoy it on some level, because it's nice. I mean, a lot of people did, a lot of people didn't. It's affected everybody differently, but for me, I kind of, because myself and my wife Carol have a new baby, it's almost like a prison sentence within a prison sentence. We're serving our sentences concurrently, so that's okay. We've been in lockdown for a while, so it's all adjustment, isn't it? And the human being, if we do nothing well, we certainly do adapt well. That's for sure.
In this country, Emil, we were blessed with great weather. For a change, we normally don't have such good. But we had literally 2 months of sunny weather. So we were outside. I wrote a lot of songs during this thing. It was a great spell and we communicated an awful lot with people on the internet. Wrote lots of songs with different songwriters around the world. And, a lot of them are good, a lot of them are bad, but that's the way of things normally. But I did find that after the first 2 weeks, getting used to the fact that I didn't have to rush everywhere, I just took my time writing songs, as distinct from trying to get them done to a deadline.
It has kept me to playing and singing every week. And also it's keeping me in touch with an audience, which is a national audience, which has been very, very helpful during this time. So it's because we can't, and obviously Charlie knows this, and Emil, every musician knows that we can't go and play live in front of a live audience, which is a very, very tricky thing for musicians. And I don't mean necessarily from an ego point of view. I really mean from the creative point of view, because creative gene is a thirsty one, and you probably know our pubs as well have been closed for a long time. so I just thought I'd mention that. But that said, I mean, it's good to feel purposeful, because don't forget, Emil, all of a sudden the purpose was taken away from everybody, and the lovely distractions that life has to offer, whether it's theatre or music, or whether it's a restaurant, or whether it's a chat in a pub with some friends, or whatever it might be. Certainly the social interaction. I mean, for that to be taken away, and essentially your liberty to be taken away, is quite a big thing to swallow for the human condition. Anyway, that's for sure.
It's 26 years since you won Eurovision. I wonder, does it feel like it were yesterday?
we've been very lucky with the song that we had, that it has almost become an anthem now in the country at football matches, all kinds of different social occasions. And the funny thing is, after 26 years, people still sing it. We still sing it. We did one of the major TV shows just before the lockdown, as a matter of fact, just as the lockdown was happening. And it was so heartening to know that people still love the song. And I think that the song being the thing, it's a Eurovision Song Contest, and the song certainly won for us. What do you think, Paul?
Your mobile phone is still in the vehicle.
I don't know who that was, but anyway, maybe that was somebody in the band we forgot to pay.
That was my friendly Audi reporter there telling me that I made a mess.
But listen, very, very quickly. I mean, for me, and I think in many ways, which is great. I think the song has gained in popularity over the years, and I think that's the time it has become more popular. It is reaching different audiences, bigger audiences, more diverse audiences. And it has taken on a life of its own, which is really nice.
It's a bit scary, though, when people come up to me and they tell me that it's their grandmother's favourite song. Yeah, I know. When it's my grandmother telling you that.
I have read that it was a very long process from when Rock and Roll Kids was written until its final form. And I also read it was submitted already in 1992 to the pre-selection.
Yes, I was on the jury the year that it was in, and I had heard the song. I know Brendan very well. I didn't know Paul that well, but it was actually me that encouraged Brendan to get some, because I did the original demo of it, and it was pretty dreadful. Now I think I did a Don Williams version of it, but Brendan brought me back Paul's version, and as soon as I heard it, I said that is the best thing I've ever heard in a long, long time. So we put it in, but I happened to be on the judging panel that year, so I had to declare, that I knew Paul and that I knew Brendan. So I had to abstain, and the song didn't get through, unfortunately. But maybe fortunately for me, because I ended up singing it the following year.
Yeah, a nice bit of luck there. That's like a nice bit of serendipity there, I think.
Yeah.
You don't still have this dreadful demo?
Oh, I do somewhere, but I wouldn't let anybody hear it. It's locked in a vault somewhere.
I think, now I never heard your demo, but I do know you as a more than competent singer and player. So it can never be as bad as A, you think it was, and B, I don't know if you ever heard, but I did, the original version that Brendan Graham did at the piano, and believe you me, if I could ever put my hands on that, I could make a fortune with ransom money from Brendan.
we give Brendan a very hard time, but you have to hand it to him. He's had so many great big songs since then. Like you Raise Me Up is possibly one of the most recorded songs of the 20th century. But we're lucky, Paul, in a way, and that we get to hear it in its purest form. That's how it is in Brendan's head when he sings it and plays the piano.
We were the rock and roll kids. Rock and roll was all we did, and listening to those songs on the radio. I was yours and you were mine. That was once upon a time. Now we never seem to rock and roll anymore.
I suppose it would have to have bolstered his confidence as a songwriter,
Brendan is a really hard worker. He works very hard at what he does.
Yeah, and it was his third song to the Eurovision Song Contest. He did the song for 1976 and 1985 also before.
When the lonely silence calls, when I walk through empty halls, then all my thoughts run on to you. And when they linger for a while, you come and touch me with your tender smile.
It is said that there were initially more verses to the song than the ones you sang. Do you remember this?
No.
I certainly don't, because when I was given the song, the demo, or should I say the music? Let me rephrase that, Emil. Brendan contacted me to sing a half a dozen songs in a studio, literally as a working musician, and there were several songs there, but one of the songs was Rock and Roll Kids, and to my living memory, I don't remember additional verses or anything like it. So that's, unless there's something I don't know about, but from my memory, what we sing to this day is what was written. So there you go. Unless you have some sort of inside information.
No, I just read online that it had 7 verses that were chosen from.
Well, Brendan, he's a ruthless editor. He, like any of us, when we write a song first, or even when you write a book, for example, the editing process can be, merciless, and you have to sort of discard. I couldn't imagine 7 verses of Rock and Roll Kids, to be quite honest.
No,
because it's a very simple story, and it's a sad song in a way, because the singer is singing about is that he wished he could be back when he was a rock and roll kid and when life was much better and life was much easier.
Paul, this was your first attempt to Eurovision.
Yeah, it was. Eurovision was something that you watched, that you didn't participate in, because it was one of these things you never thought. I never thought I didn't know what the way in was. And again, I suppose, particularly at this time, I had a slightly different trajectory in a musical career. And I suppose it never occurred to me that this would be something that I would ever get involved in. So I kind of accidentally fell into it, literally like that. I met Brendan. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was in Imro I met him, but I did meet him somewhere where he asked me. And I heard nothing after that until, as Charlie explained about the song being rejected, and then it finally went through. And then that's when I heard of Brendan again. And he mentioned to me that it had got through, and I really contemplated not doing it, to be honest, at that time, because I was heading in a very different direction. And I was on my way in to meet Brendan somewhere in town, perhaps again in the Imro building, I think it was. And I was going in to tell him that I wasn't interested in getting involved, and that was that. I was going to do something else, and I saw Brendan, and Brendan is a big man and big kind of big friendly giant look. So he's the sort of guy you don't know if he's going to put his arms out and give you a big hug, or he's going to break your neck, that kind of way. But no, he had a big smile on his face and a kind of an inquisitive look, and he looked at me and he said, well, and I kind of looked at him and I said, oh yeah, of course, let's do it. I completely changed my mind, done a 100 or 360 degree turnabout. All I can say is don't, if I tell you something and I decide on something, don't depend on it. I could change my mind in a blink of an eye. Funny,
I didn't know that, Paul. Funny, we know each other a long time. That's the first time I realised. And curiously enough, I was in a similar situation myself when Brendan asked me to get involved. It wasn't a good. I had a lot of domestic stuff. I was moving house, to a completely different part of the country, and I was reluctant. And I said, I'll think it over for 24 hours, and I'll come back to you.
But it wasn't your first attempt, Charlie, because I know you were beaten by Johnny Logan twice before.
Yeah, but I don't hold that against him. I still love him dearly.
And not to mention all the other times Charlie was beaten by Johnny Logan when we were touring. That was only in the dressing room that year. We had a big tour. We had a big tour together some years ago. All the Eurovision winners, with the exception of Emer Quinn, unfortunately. But now she's enjoying and loving all things Eurovision again, which is great. So welcome back, Emer.
Your song were Bebop Delight and Are You Shy? Bebop Delight from 1984 and Are You Shy from 1987. You came third with both.
And on the Bebop Delight there is fantasy skimming. Merry-go night with all the trimmings. On a Bebop Delight you can count all your winnings before the game is through. Are you shy? Or are there some more reasons why you don't seem to laugh or to cry? Or is it simply that I can't see you? Is it fair? There has to be something.
Bebop Delight was a kind of a fantasy song. you know, kind of like a child's dreaming and stuff like that. And it was, you know, and what I really liked about it was Noel Keelan, who was the musical director at the time, did a lovely string arrangement of it and a lovely sort of instrumental bridge in it, you know, that was just gorgeous. Then Are You Shy? I remember because it was suddenly we were into miming, not so much miming, but playing to backing tracks. Whereas when Bebop Delight was there, it was all live, orchestra live, singing live, backing vocals live. But with Are You Shy, we were suddenly playing to a backing track, and I find it very difficult to work with backing tracks. I'm a live musician. I like to play guitar and sing. So that was my first introduction to doing sort of working to a backing track on television. So which is a strange thing for me. But anyway, it was fun all times. And it's funny, Johnny, who's Mr. Eurovision all over Europe, I'm sure you'll agree, Emil, he's what absolutely. Eurovision is all about. But we've all become very friendly because we have worked together on many occasions. And he's an amazing performer. I mean, you know, what is he, 84, 85 years of age now?
It's certainly 10 or 15 years since his last facelift. I know that for sure. But he's a remarkable man who has completely, I mean, he's a private guy too, with his family and you know, he is certainly a big family man these days, but he's dedicated himself to this to his art and his craft all his life. Always looked after his voice, which is an incredible instrument, and you know, he's a big, larger than life entertainer and a lovely guy. When he walks into a room, he lights it up. And same thing, Emil, when you see him on stage. I mean, I am, despite rumours put out by Charlie McGettigan, I am actually younger than Johnny Logan. But I used to go and see him in shows, and I would have been a fan of him. And
the funny thing, Paul, I remember way back when I was 14 or 15 years of age, I always had this in my head: I'm going to represent Ireland in the Eurovision someday.
Oh,
and I had this picture of the full orchestra. Noel Keelan coming out, you know, and the conductor of the orchestra is Noel Keelan, here to sing whatever it is. And of all times, we decided we wouldn't have the orchestra. And I know. We'd sing the song with no orchestra. And of course, we know a lot of guys in the orchestra, and they were delighted. They got away for a tea break every time we had a rehearsal, you know, or a drink break even. But talking about going back to Johnny Logan, there is a downside to it from my point of view, in that on one of our tours last year or a few years ago, we were staying in a hotel, and I was in the lobby of the hotel, and Johnny comes in. And of course, all the heads turn to Johnny when he walks into a room. But he came over to chat me, and we had a chat for 2 or 3 minutes. And he went over then to check in. And this little old lady came up to me, and she said, "Was that Johnny Logan?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Are you his father?" So that's the downside of being a friend with Johnny Logan.
You won by a big margin in the pre-selection hosted in Limerick, and some stupid commentators around Europe claimed that your song was selected by the Irish juries to avoid winning again.
Oh my God! Who dares say something like that?
I tell you, they have a lot to answer for nowadays. I bet they're eating their Eurovision hats.
Emil, I never heard that before. That's 2 things I've discovered now. Paul Harrington as a reluctant Eurovision entrant, and now somebody saying that we were put in deliberately to lose. I'm absolutely shattered here. The tears are running down my face.
Emil, you must be very happy because you're asking the right questions, you see. What happens is over the years, and Charlie and I would remember this, particularly in the immediate aftermath, when we were doing interview after interview after interview. And it was like the two of us would be blue in the face answering just literally, and we'd look and say, no, please don't ask exactly the same questions every time, because we kept trying to come up with different answers just to amuse ourselves, you know. But, you know, in telling you this and saying this, a very fond memory and a great time as well. You know, we were catapulted into some sort of stardom that was very interesting and a very interesting bubble and enjoyable. You know, I have to say it's sometimes looking back at it and when you do see, you know, for example, if we're on TV and they show a clip of back then, it's like looking at something from the Wizard of Oz or something. It's like it's bizarre but wonderful too. You know,
I think we did 150 interviews in over 2 days.
There you go.
So, as you say, you get bored with the same answers. So now my problem is I don't know whether half of the things I remember were things I made up or whether they actually happened. And you were always correcting me on that. You'd say, no, that never happened. And I just realized I invented this story somehow or other. It also depends. We have a kind of a unique sense of humor between the two of us. You know, we all understand each other. But I remember one particular interview. Now, German humor and Irish humor are completely different. And we were on German television, and the German said in broken English, he said, how is it that you have now won 3 times in a row? What is it that Ireland is doing that makes them so successful? I said, I don't know. As a matter of fact, we're over here giving lessons to all the other songwriters in the thing. And he looked at me with a serious face and said, can you tell us when these lessons are happening?
Very straight indeed. Yeah.
The interval act this year was one of the most famous of all times, the introduction of Riverdance, which went on to become huge. And I wonder, as participants, how much did you notice the success of the interval act?
Oh, well, I would say, hopefully I could speak for Charlie for the first bit. I think, we didn't get to see it because it was something that was kept in camera or closed. We couldn't see the act until I think on the night. But I mean, that was pretty obvious to see that this was something special and something wonderful. But in terms of being aware of its success as a piece of music, as a piece of dance, and to become the huge thing that it is nowadays. I mean, that took quite a long time. So that, I think it was possibly a year later before Riverdance started to really take off, And I mean, I remember one time Charlie and I were in what was then a HMV record store doing a signing on one of our boutique streets, Grafton Street, and we were there for at least 2 hours, maybe more, 2.5 hours, with queues and queues of people. And at that time, I did notice the very occasional people handing us a copy of the Riverdance piece of music on what was then called cassette. Well, you're way too young to remember those, Emil. But so that was kind of saying, oh, okay, that was starting to make a little bit of its presence felt, but it took a long time, And again, if you ever talk or look at, interviews with Moya Doherty and John McColgan, it very nearly didn't get underway because they struggled to get funding for it, So, but they did, and of course, the rest is history.
Yeah, the disappointing thing I always found about Riverdance, they say that it has generated over 100 million euros in revenue, and we only generated 50 million, which is really disappointing.
Half a loaf is better than no bread. Isn't that what they say?
From this year, 1994, I have in previous episodes talked to Petra Frey from Austria, Nina Morato from France, Edita Gorniak from Poland, who came second, and the Finnish sisters Cat, who sang Before You wearing grandma's underwear.
I do remember, was it Frances Ruth, the English entry?
Yes.
She was staying in our hotel. It was coming towards the end of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, with the result that there were security men around. The fact that she was English, there were security people around our hotel, and Paul and myself used to spend a lot of time looking around us. I wonder, is he a security man now? Can you see a gun? I wonder if I do remember that part. But the big joy of the week, I have to say, because I said to you earlier, Emil, I come from a very small town of 700 people.
Of which you are the king.
Yeah. But I think all 700 people from the town arrived up at the Irish party that night, and they were all delighted to be involved. It was a great night. And I remember we struck up a relationship with the Maltese group that particular night, and we all ended up out in the club out north in Radio Television, and one of my friends got so drunk he fell on top of a table full of drinks, and he's been famous for that ever since.
Who was that, Charlie? Are you going to name them?
Yeah, I will. Dermot Walsh, my
very
wife's brother-in-law. Yeah, he knows who he is. I do remember going back to Riverdance. The green room normally during the interval would be full of people who were totally self-obsessed and into what they were doing and saying, well, I wonder how many points we'll get from maybe in there. But when Riverdance came on the big screen in the green room, everybody stopped talking. and everybody's jaw just dropped looking up at the screen. And that made me kind of proud to be Irish, when I saw that our native Irish dance, which is, a huge thing here, Irish dancing. It's a very important part of our culture. And here it was going out to 300, 400 million people. And even the 25 delegations, 250 people in the green room, all stopped what they were doing to watch this. And normally you wouldn't be in the least interested in what was going on in the interval act.
When did you realize that you could win? I mean, was it long before the contest or during the voting when the 12 points kept flooding in?
It became pretty apparent about halfway through the voting, but I didn't have a history of winning things, and people, there are people who are very confident and go through their lives kind of, assuming that they will win always, all the time. But to me, I said, if this happens, this will be an absolute bonus, because as Charlie said, we did have other things going on in our lives, and we both had, I think pretty established. So, well, you more so than me at the time, Charlie. But with careers that were certainly worth nourishing and looking after, as opposed to walking away and taking a completely different direction, which is ultimately what happened. But now I've lost my train of thought. There you go. What did I start saying?
It's a bit early in the morning, Paul. I know.
I lost the point I was going to make there. Now, thank God you can edit this or not.
I asked when you did realize that you could win.
Oh yeah, very good. Yes, of course. Yes, from the halfway mark. Ultimately, we weren't of that mindset either. I mean, none of us were counting. We were kind of sitting backstage, and I suppose you reach a point where you're hoping for the best. Then it became inevitable that we couldn't lose. But there was word around that it certainly had been a favourite. A friend of mine, Tony Fenton, who's gone now, left us. He was a DJ broadcaster with the national station and the national pop station 2FM. At the time, he had heard through a grapevine that we were hot favourites, and I didn't realise and didn't know. And I know the bookies had us at 6-1.
My remembrance of it was, with about 4 countries to go, people kept telling me, "Oh, you haven't won," and the guitar was about 20 feet away from me over there, and I was thinking to myself, "Well, I have to do the reprise now, so I'll have to get the guitar and tune it up, etc." And then I thought, I can just see me and just with the guitar ready to go on to do the reprise, and the winner is Norway.
And there you sit with the guitar.
Me ready to go on, and having to get red in the face and go hide my head. Oh, sorry.
You don't want to start calculating and counting, because don't forget, your head is all a bit muzzy at that point. And the thing is, it's very easy to overlook something. I mean, I can tell you one thing. I certainly couldn't have gone through the nail biter that Niamh Kavanagh went through. I mean, that was right to the wire. I mean, that was incredible. It was exciting beyond, for it to be down to the last jury and then for it to go to her. What a shot in the arm that was, That's what Eurovision is all about, Paul, for a lot of people, is the voting. There's a lot of people have Eurovision parties in this country and they don't watch the actual singing at all, but they love watching the voting.
You did not just win, you set a lot of records. First time a country had won 3 times in a row. First time a male duo won. First time a winning song was performed without orchestra. And you scored the highest number of points up until that date.
Yeah. To be quite honest, a lot of that stuff, I don't really remember. And at the time, you're making, as you say, you're breaking records and making history, but you don't realize you're doing it at the time. You don't. No. You're just thinking of the practicalities of singing your song. And I have to say this: people often ask me, was I nervous on the night? I have to say it was the most comfortable 3 minutes I ever performed anything on stage, because Paul and myself, we struck up a rapport between us, and I think you'll agree, Paul, we have never actually played the song the same way twice. There's always some added little extra. We'd catch in one another's eye, and we'd say, "Oh, I heard that little extra chord there, that little nuance you put on that." It was so enjoyable. It was one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done. Win or lose.
Well, I agree with you. And I can tell you, I think just listening to you explaining it, again, it's like that. I love hearing other people explain a situation that I was in, because it allows me to stand back. And sometimes, I can see then what it was that made that difference. And just listening to you now, I think what made the difference for us was very early on between you and I, there was And it was unspoken, but there was a trust that was established, that when we sat at a piano and you sat at the guitar, that when we started that song, there was an absolute trust that neither of us were going to put the other one wrong, that we were there for each other. We were supporting each other for that precise 3 minutes. And again, I suppose as now that Emil is reading all those wonderful statistics, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. And I must ask here, can you tell me about the trophy you got? Because for us, the viewers, it looked like something that was baked in foil.
Well, I think it was Brendan that got the trophy. Actually, the songwriter got the trophy. It looked like a piece of piping.
Yeah,
which I've seen it. Brendan showed it to us. Obviously, we got to see it, but I think no more than there's a monument right in the centre of Dublin called the Spire, which is like a 150-foot needle sticking up out of the ground, and I still to this day haven't figured out the relevance of it. And I suppose whoever designed the trophy would have had something in mind, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, I believe it was modelled on what a very famous thing in Ireland at the time called a breakfast roll. You're right. It looked like a breakfast roll wrapped in tin foil that was in and out of a builder's pocket every 20 minutes, taking a bite out of it. You're absolutely right. But you know what I'm really enjoying is you and I, Charlie, absolutely destroying some wonderful artist of renown has designed that, and we're completely starred in strips of it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. There's people give our song a hard time.
We could be sued for some of that 50 million now.
Listen, talk, and you know what? You never know who's listening, because guess what? On my email, I don't know how it happened. It would have happened a lot of years ago, but there's one of the Rock and Roll Kids performances is on YouTube, and every now and again, if people make a comment or subscribe to that or something, it comes in on my email. And ordinarily, I wouldn't look, but you know what? I'm surprised how sore losers the Polish are. This day, they're still saying, "Oh, Edita should have won that," and I'm kind of going, "Come on, give us a break, get over yourselves," and it's funny because before lockdown, I used to go and have breakfast in a local lovely place called the Lovely Food Company, but there's a very nice Polish lady works there, girl, young mother, but she would know the girl Edita pretty well. She was a bit of a national figure at the time, but we often have fun about that, and every now and again when I would show her one of these things, and she would just laugh and say, "My God, have people nothing better to be doing 26 years later, saying Poland should have won."
You have taken part in the Eurovision once more as a backup singer for John Martin in '98.
It's always over now. Does it ever last that long? Were the feelings that I had ever right, or was it wrong? To think that love should last was mistaken on my part. But you promised me the earth, and you only broke my heart.
And Charlie, you took part in the Irish pre-selection in 2015 as a composer.
Did I?
Yes.
Did I?
You did.
Yes, I did. I beg your pardon. I do remember.
Beautiful.
Anybody got a shoulder I could cry? Anybody got a hand to hold? Anybody warm, I'm feeling cold? Anybody want to hear the reason why? Anybody got a shoulder I could? Anybody got a shoulder I could? Anybody got a shoulder I could cry?
Sorry.
This song finished second.
I was really disappointed because, of all the songs I've written for Eurovision, I think it was possibly the best one.
Yeah,
and, I really loved the song, and I had a lovely singer Kat Mahan, and who I've just met by accident in a recording studio, and I said, God, I must get you to try and sing this song. Yeah, I was quite disappointed that we didn't get to represent Ireland with that one. I'm always available. I'm sure you are as well, Paul. I'm always available to write. I would never ever aspire to performing in it again because I'm 69 years old. I think it's a young people's game, but I write young people's songs. I write songs that young people can sing, and who knows? I could be back with a song in another year.
I'd certainly go back as a musician or as a backing singer. In fact, the just because it's such a fun week, you were talking about me going in with Don Martin that time. I mean, that was just I had a fantastic week.
When will Ireland win next time?
Well, I think we're putting Dustin in again next year. Dustin
You're saying and the announcement will be, ladies and gentlemen, we give you Dustin and we don't want him back.
Give us another chance. We're sorry for Riverdance. Sure, flatly he's a Yank, and the Danube flows through France. Block vote, shock vote, give us your 12 today. You're all invited to Dublin, Ireland, to a party the Shamrock Way. Ireland, they do squat. Ireland, they do squat. Ireland, they do squat. Till the buggy beat. Ireland, they do squat. Ireland, they do squat.
Thank you for this, Paul and Charlie. This was a delight to talk to you, and I know that there is a guy sitting now and listening to this called Marcus Björkander that is a hardcore Eurovision fan as me and thinks Rock and Roll Kids is the best song in all of music history.
Marcus, how are you? And thanks, Emil, for pointing out that to us, because as you know, as you've been listening, we've been talking about how popular the song has become over the years, over time. And, it's people like you, Marcus, who keep the dream alive as well for us. And I'm delighted that you enjoy it and derive so much joy from it. So keep safe and keep washing your hands and keep singing Rock and Roll Kids.
Emil, thanks for having me, and see you sometime soon, Paul.
Okay, Charlie, God bless. Nice to talk to you this morning.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I was yours and you were mine. That was once upon a time. Now we never seem to rock and roll anymore. I was yours and you were mine. That was once upon a time. Now we never seem to rock and roll. We just never seem to rock and roll.